o'clock. Keith Treacy joining us in the studio as well. Morning, Keith.
How are you, lads? Alright?
Keeping well. Stephen Bradley, a little bit downtrodden after the match last night, I think it's fair to say, but I mean, he kind of said it in advance of the game. He expected this Breiðablik team to be dangerous enough, and right he was.
Yeah, he was very right. I think a lot of people were reading into the rankings and thinking, Rovers will go and beat them. But the first 45 minutes from Rovers was really poor for me. I think obviously they haven't been great in the league. I know people will be screaming they're top of the league, but for me they just haven't reached the levels that you would expect of that team and that squad. So I think it just rolled in. The first 10 minutes, Sean Hoare loses his man in the 6-yard box. The header goes straight at the goalkeeper. That easily could have been 1-0 down. That's the first 10 minutes, and make no mistake about it, when you come in and you start training your first day of pre-season, you start talking about Europe. The Irish clubs start talking about Europe. I know they do. So Shamrock Rovers have been looking forward to this. So to start as slow as they did, I just don't understand it. So, but look, I give Breiðablik a lot of credit. I think they were better than a lot of people thought they would be, and even in the 92nd minute, I think they had a wide free kick and they put 7 people in the box. Yeah. So they came to play. They didn't come to sit back and see what Rovers have. They came, and I think they felt Rovers' power, and I think after that, I think Breiðablik will be even more confident now going into the second leg. So look, it's by no means done and dusted, but Rovers need to go there and win the game, which is going to be very, very difficult.
I know the vibes out of Stephen Bradley were that they knew what Breiðablik were going to bring, that they were better than what, say, the bookies were suggesting and what people were talking about in advance. The sense at the ground was that it caught the supporters by shock how good Breiðablik were, and I do wonder with the players as well, with how fast they started the game, because Rovers last year, okay, at time in qualification it was the second leg and there was a sense that they had nothing to lose, but they came, they attacked really good teams, performed very strongly, but 20 minutes into that game you're going, this team are a step above where Rovers are.
Yeah, well, look, I would say that the first half you're thinking Breiðablik are really, really good. This is going to be a struggle for Shamrock Rovers, but I would look to the second half, Nate, and it was a lot more competitive in the second half when Rovers were at it, when they were going after people, they were pressing a little bit more. When Graham Burke came on for about 10-15 minutes, he started pulling strings, maybe had a few chances, and Rovers did. I think they had 5 shots on target in the game. Kavanagh had one where he cut in on his right and sort of skied it. There was a lovely little angle there just to curl that. So they did make chances. I think Stephen Bradley and Rovers should just forget about that first half, because that can happen in football. It's a little bit unforgiving when you're saying, Rovers have been looking forward to this, the fans have been looking forward to this. A lot of people put all their eggs into the European basket. A lot of the Rovers fans have. So to turn up and be that poor in the first 45 minutes, I just hope that isn't the difference between the two teams after the 2 legs, and it could very well be, because it seems like going on the second half alone, there's very little between these two teams.
And the goal even in itself was disappointing. Like, Gaffney too keen to take the free kick, gives the ball away, and then obviously Dan Cleary is forced to make the rash challenge. Like, it's just disappointing that's how the goal was conceded, because that, as you say, that could be the goal that...
Yeah, well, it is. These big games, they always come down to fine margins, and even the free kick itself, I think it's Gaffney who leaves a bit of a gap, and the ball comes through the gap in the wall, and even I think it's fairly central. I don't like criticising goalkeepers, but when it's as central as that, I think even when Minovic hits it, when you hit a strike like that, generally when it comes off your foot, you're thinking that's hitting the back of the net. Yeah. I don't think he'd have got that feeling, so he'd have been a little bit surprised that it went in, but I get that he would have seen it late. There was gaps in the wall which there shouldn't have been, so I think Rovers just made a couple of basic mistakes, and a silly free kick they give away. But again, when they did go direct to Gaffney from front to back, I thought they looked dangerous. I thought Gaffney done well, won his one-on-one battles, but Breiðablik then adapted and went one long, one short, and they started to figure that out as well. So look, they look like a very, very good team, but Rovers have felt their power now, so hopefully Rovers now will be at it from the off. If they can get a goal in the first 20 minutes over there, then anything can happen, but it's going to be very, very difficult from what we've seen.
What did you think about Rovers' team selection last night? Both team selection and tactics, and the way they set up, particularly in that first half, where Richie Towell is on the bench, Graham Burke is on the bench. Obviously injury problems with the wing backs that are so crucial to them, and Ferrugia felt like a massive loss last night, but they didn't seem to have any link at all between Gaffney and what was behind.
Yeah, well, I think that was obviously down to I'd have liked to see Graham Burke play from the start. Whoever you want to take out there, I'd have just wedged him in somehow. I think his goals return so far in the league has been really, really good. And you play your best players in the biggest game. But look, Stephen Bradley generally gets it right. So I'm not sure what's going on in the background, if he has a niggle or he's not feeling 100%. So I'd have liked to see Graham Burke in there. But the reason I think Rovers couldn't play through the middle is because Breiðablik were really, really good. They were showing them into the pitch, and they were setting little traps all over the place, and as soon as Rovers did go into the middle of the pitch, they were closing the door, they were nicking the ball. And look, I do think, I say it all the time, there's only one team in club football that can demand that they play in every asset of the game, and that's Manchester City. Anybody else, if the press is good, play away from it. You see them once or twice, they're standing on the halfway line. If you start clipping balls into the channel, and I know Rovers did do that a little bit more in the second half, they will eventually back off. So to keep forcing it, I think was playing into Breiðablik's hand. I think their press was good. Sometimes if the press is good, you keep playing over the top until it gets a little bit looser, and then you find the gaps.
You could argue this has been coming though. Like, look at Rovers' results this season. Okay, top of the league, but 25 games, what was it, 13 wins, 8 draws, 4 defeats. Like, they've come back to as much as maybe Dundalk, Pats have improved this year. Maybe Derry haven't kicked on the way people have expected. Like, Rovers have come back to the pack.
Yeah, maybe. I still feel they're in second or third gear. To be top of the league and saying they're in second or third gear.
But you could say that before last night, because if you're going to click through the gears, last night's the night you do it.
That's it, but it really isn't that easy, and believe me, it took me a big chunk of my playing career to believe that, to understand it's not a tap. You don't just turn it on and off when you want. It has to be an all the time thing. So Rovers being in second and third gear in the league and still winning games, still being top of the league, they probably just got a little bit comfortable and thought we'll be okay and we'll turn it on when Europe rolls around.
I guess the question I'm asking is, because I think an awful lot of people would have felt watching Rovers that they are in second or third gear and it's going to happen. Actually, maybe that is them at their best.
I don't think so. I think with the individual talent, I think if you get them all them players playing properly, Jack Bourne, Graham Burke, even Aaron Green, I like Gaffney as well, I love as a player. Ferrugia is a big miss when he comes back in. I do think there's a lot more to come, and Stephen Bradley knows it. And when you listen to Stephen Bradley's interviews, he doesn't panic. Even last season when he weren't playing well, the start of this season, he said don't worry, it will click. He knows what he has in the dressing room. So there's an awful lot more to come, and hopefully when they play next week, hopefully Rovers take Breiðablik by surprise and are a little bit better than they're expecting.
The concerning thing is, and the Breiðablik manager made this point after the match last night, Rovers have more European pedigree, they have a bigger budget, and they're a bigger club than Breiðablik. That is that famous line with Sean Boylan, get your shyness out of your back pocket. Like, the Irish clubs need to start taking these games by the horns, because this is a match that Rovers should be winning on paper.
Yeah, see, you can buy into that. A lot of the media will come out and say that, and you buy into the rankings and you think, okay, on paper we should beat these, but they're sprinkled with Icelandic internationals. There's some internationals knocking around, so they do have some pedigree. The way they tried to play football, and like I said, in the 92nd minute when they're putting 7 players in the box, this is not a shy team. This is a team that want to play football. So even that in itself would tell you that they're a confident bunch of lads, and the way they knocked it about in the middle of the pitch, some of the 1-2 stuff, the way they press, and they're all athletic. They can all get around the pitch. Even the centre halves are quite athletic as well, so when they have 3-2 at the back, they can cover up the ground. So look, they do have weaknesses. The high line is a weakness. They do put an awful lot of bodies forward to the press. Once or twice we did see Rovers, Jack Bourne flicking it round the corner, one touch stuff. It's dangerous stuff. If you lose it, they're in your final third, but if you break the press, you're running at their back 3. So it's very, very dangerous stuff, but it's great to watch, and Rovers will have to get it right next week.
I think as well, it is very difficult to acclimatise isn't the right word, but when you go to European football, you're playing champions, you're playing the best teams in their league. So and I think Stewie was getting a bit of stick after the coverage last night for saying that Rovers aren't being pushed hard enough in the League of Ireland by what's around them, which, considering the way the league table is and not exactly running away with it, it's hard to criticise those around them there. But Rovers dominate possession in pretty much every game they play in Ireland, because they're the best team, because technically they have the most gifted players. Jack Byrne can run the show in the League of Ireland. Like, this team, Breiðablik, they won the Icelandic League. They won it by being the best team, by being the most comfortable on the ball. There's very few teams who win their league by sitting deep, by coming at you on the counter attack. So Rovers probably aren't used to playing against a team that are technically as good as that side were last night, even if they're not one of the best teams in Europe.
Yeah, that's true. And look, at Breiðablik obviously won the league last season, and I think they lost 2 or 3 of their better players, so that was the reason I thought they'd be weak and then Rovers would raise their game. So I expected it to be a very tight game overall, but I thought Rovers might be able to nick it. But look, Breiðablik are very good, very compact on the ball. They make very few mistakes, and they are good, but there is weaknesses there. When Rovers did play 1 or 2 touch, you can see them starting to make holes. They were making rash challenges, but like I say, it is going to be difficult for Rovers. Nathan's right, they're not used to not having the ball, but you know, sometimes you have to just fight fire with fire. If a team are possession based, the way to hurt them is when you nick it, go straight for the jugular. Now teams will generally do that to Rovers, so they will know how to do it, and they just, maybe if you get somebody up front with Gaffney at times, I thought he was decent last night, but I did think he was isolated. Yeah, so if you get
again at home in Europe, like, should that is it not a night where you have to put Johnny Kenny up there, or you put Towell right up alongside him? The physicality of Towell getting in there, it just felt at home. Like, now they've put themselves very much behind the 8 ball going to Iceland, that they needed to show a little bit more ambition.
Yeah, look, I think that Stephen Bradley and Rovers were thinking, listen, we'll put out our team, we'll do what we want, and I don't mean that in a cocky way. I just think they thought on paper we're better than Breiðablik, we should be able to have our way with them, but Breiðablik obviously knew they had something up their sleeve. So I do think now next week Stephen Bradley will get a little bit more down and dirty with the tactics. He might play 2 up front, he might go from back to front a little bit more, so I do think tactics will come into it a bit more. But yeah, I think maybe even the Rovers fans, like you said, Nathan, were a little bit quiet after the start. I think even they were took by surprise with how good these were.
It was interesting, the wording of Stephen Bradley after the match as well. He didn't say, you know, sometimes you're accused of not showing teams enough respect in Europe, but he said we showed them too much respect, which is a fair point. Probably you can sense that by the way they set up.
Yeah, well, it can be a bit of a surprise when you set up and you're not quite sure what you're going out to, and all of a sudden you're thinking, oh my God, these are decent, and you know, you go chasing shadows all of a sudden. But to be fair, again, just forget that first half, because the first half they were so passive. They were standing off people. I remember seeing now nothing came of this, but Dan Cleary was on the halfway line and their left winger just literally skipped past him. Dan Bourne sold himself, and I was thinking, you can't do that at this level of football. You can't do that. You either drag them down, you go and jockey them, you slow them down, you force them inside the bodies. You can't just sell yourself. Now they recovered and nothing happened, but it's just little things like that. You think, what is going through your head there? You're not thinking about what's behind you, and it just needs to be a little bit sharper all over the pitch from Rovers, and they can't start like that over there.
They're not as good as last year as part of the problem. Like, if you look at what they've lost from probably just over 12 months ago when Mandreo left, Andy Lyons has gone, like Chris McCann became a really big player during the European campaign last year. They haven't been able to replace them with similar quality. Alright, Trevor Clark, you know, has done well this season, but missed out last night as well. It feels as though they're in a little bit of limbo in that they have enough resources to be the best team in Ireland, but it doesn't feel as though the resources are there to kick on to being a really strong competitive European side year on year. Like this, missing out in Conference League football even this year would be a huge setback.
Yeah, it would, but look, I do think it comes down to the strength of the league, and Rovers are winning the league, and I do think there's a bit of truth in what Stewie Bourne was saying last night about Rovers not being pushed. If the competition you're up against week in, week out is not quite up to the standard you're going to face in Europe, then there is going to be a bit of getting used to it. Now, the one thing for me is that Rovers have felt their power now. Hopefully they know what to expect. But do I think Rovers are worse than they were last year? Maybe on paper I think Lyons is a big miss, but again, Ferrugia, I think it will be okay when he comes back. So I think 1 or 2 injuries, I think there's an awful lot more to come. I think they've the best squad by a country mile in the league. There's an awful lot more to come, and I just think they're underperforming at the minute.
I'll put you in an awkward position. One of the things Rovers have done very well over the last few years is obviously look around the league and bring in players, young players, to strengthen themselves. When you look at what Rovers have at the moment, are there players around the league that you look at that you think they should be targeting, maybe even during this transfer window?
Possibly, but it's very hard to do any business just at the minute. Well, for Rovers in this league, I'm sure they could have the pick of anybody in the Irish league at the minute, obviously having Europe. But look, there is little gems in there. I think there's great little footballers, but I'm not sure who they could go out and get, to be honest with you. I like the likes of Darren Markey at Drogheda, you know, little diamonds in the rough, people like that. But look, I don't think it's the amount of bodies. You know, I'm looking at the bench last night, the likes of Aaron Green, people coming off the bench. I think the squad is strong. I think it's fine. I think they'll win the league at a canter this season. So they just need to be a little bit more on it in Europe. I don't think they're as weak as maybe their first 45 minutes shown.
Just looking at their record away from home in Europe, like the last few years, so since they've beaten the Icelandic team Stjarnan in 2017, they've managed only 2 wins in 14 away ties in Europe. So that's concerning. That probably highlights the task that's ahead of them, maybe. Yeah,
again, but I think that Stephen Bradley and Rovers, when they play away from home, they tend to play exactly they would at home.
More positively.
They play very positively, which, you know, obviously now looking at the facts that they've only won 2 and 14 away from home, it could probably be viewed as a little bit naive. Maybe now they need to go and win the game. So look, I don't know, do you shut up shop for the first 60 minutes, just make sure Breiðablik don't get on the scoreline and then you go and throw the kitchen sink at them, or do you go and play open expansive football and you could be out of tie after 20 minutes? It's look, Stephen will go and approach this, he'll have a look at how he thinks how they can hurt them, but the number one thing is to try and keep Breiðablik out. If Breiðablik score over there, it's going to be it's already an uphill battle, but it's going to be Mount Everest if Breiðablik score. So the number one thing is a clean sheet, keep them out and just get your front lads to express themselves a little bit more. Can't be as passive as they were, can't sell themselves like they did. And the one thing for me in the whole of the 90 minutes, Rovers had, you know, a couple of minutes here or there where they were turning the screw, but very little momentum in the game. Very rarely were you thinking it's on the way, there's a goal coming here. There was little moments, but not enough pressure for me.
Yeah, I think they just need to keep it tight away from home now, because now look, last year Ferencváros and Ludogorets are probably a step above what they're going to play this time, but they just made so many stupid mistakes away from home. It ended up costing them, because they were brilliant then back in Tala, that like actually, you know, almost playing for extra time, being mature about this may not be the worst idea.
Yeah, well look, that's it. You just don't be out of the game at half time. You know, if it's still 1-0 on aggregate, that's no problem. Just stay in the game, stick around. The longer it stays 0 all over there, the more they will get edgy, because they know a sucker punch could be on the way. So look, I don't want Rovers to go there and play a low block and void pressure and, you know, just come under the caution, hopefully, you know, nick it on the counter. I do think there's a hybrid approach here. They can play a little bit of football, but, you know, when there's a 50-50 fighting ball in your own final third, just hook it into the channel. You know, don't be trying to get it down and play in them areas, not in the first half anyway. Just play a hybrid approach, play sensible football, keep yourself in the game, and then, like I say, when we get into the business end, 60-70 minutes, start making a few more risks, and hopefully we can hit them.
We should, Keith, before we go, mention some of the transfers involving Irish players that have kind of happened over the last week or two. We of course last week heard about Nathan Collins to Brentford, Chidozie Ogbenya to Luton Town. Ryan Manning's joined Russell Martin at Southampton, which is an interesting move for him. Both work together, of course, with Swansea. Jason Knight to Bristol City. On the back page of the Sun I'm looking at here, Matt Doherty closing in on a sensational return to Wolves for free 3 years after Spurs paid 15 million for him. Wolves are actually going to play Celtic in Dublin on the 29th of July. Both teams pulled out of a pre-season tournament in South Korea, promoters failing to fulfil their obligations, so could have his Wolves' second debut in Dublin. But an interesting move for Matt Doherty back to Wolves.
Yeah, a decent move. A lot of the moves for the Irish boys on paper are decent moves. Again, that's a very decent move from Matt, and you would expect him to play at Wolves. I know Wolves have a decent defensive record under Lopetegui, but hopefully now he comes in and plays. Even the Ogbeni one really gets me excited, because Ogbeni going to Luton, you know, Luton don't have millions to be thrown around. You would imagine now they brought him in the door that he will play, so he'll get to cut his teeth in the Premier League. And Collins to Brentford as well is a really, really good move. But people said this to me 12 months ago, isn't it a great move for Collins to be going to Wolves? Didn't turn out that way, so this will only be a good move if Nathan plays. If Nathan doesn't play, you know, I think the Irish team will suffer for it in the long run.
It's great that Doherty isn't going to Saudi Arabia for any number of reasons. Wolves is just an interesting one at the moment, because it does seem there's a lot of issues around the club. There was speculation at the end of the season that maybe Lopetegui would go because there was no money. The fact they've sold Nathan Collins, the speculation around Max Kilman. We sort of thought again this time last season Kilman and Collins would be the best young centre back pairing in the Premier League and would play together for 5 years. There's talk of Kilman potentially going to Napoli, another trying to keep him on a contract, but that would be the one worry, Matt Doherty, that he's going back to a Wolves side, albeit incredibly well coached, it seemed, by Lopetegui, that are in a bit of a state of flux. But from where he's been, like, he just needs to play football. It's been like 6 months without any games at all at Atletico Madrid, and even the previous couple of years been so stop-start at Tottenham. Like, if you could get anywhere back, like, there hasn't been as exciting an Irish player in the Premier League since that last season Doherty had at Wolves. Like, it was exceptional.
Yeah, we do. And look, when he plays well, Matt's a brilliant player going forward. There's obviously question marks on him in a 1v1 defensive situation sometimes, but going forward he's really, really good. But Lopetegui, hopefully when he gets him in the door, will stand him up, show him how to defend, and just be a little bit better, a little bit harder to beat in those situations. But look, he has everything he needs, and if he plays, it'll turn out to be a great move. And I do think Doherty will get back in there. I think he has a bit of a love for Wolves. I think there's something in him that just wants to do well for that club. So hopefully, that should be a decent match for Matt and for Ireland.
Yeah, a couple of exciting signings. Keith, thanks a million for coming in as per usual. Great stuff. Keith Treacy there with us on Wednesday mornings, OTB AM.